Hello everyone, how are you? Ukrainian armed forces repel Russian assaults near 14 cities and villages and destroy 2 Russian command posts. General Staff report Ukraine's defense forces have repelled Russian attacks in the vicinity of 14 cities and villages in Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts and have struck several critical Russian military targets. I will convey to you today's important developments. And I'll look into what might be on the map. If you want the war to end, I would appreciate it if you like the video and comment. Don't hold back your support and let's show our stance. Including 2 command posts. Source: the armed forces of Ukraine have repelled Russian attacks in the vicinity of Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Spern, Bakhmutsky, Bakhmut, Ivanhorod, Klishchivka, Ozaryanivka, Mayorsk, Kamyanka, Pervomoyska, Nevelsky, Marinka, Novomykhailivka and Pavlivka, Donetsk Oblast, over the course of the past 24 hours. Also over the course of the past 24 hours, Russian forces carried out 6 missile strikes and 21 airstrikes, as well as over 60 attacks using multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS. Around 20 Ukrainian cities, towns and villages in Lviv, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Mykolaiv and Vinnytsia oblasts came under Russian fire. There were no significant changes on the Volyn and Polisia fronts. On other fronts, the Russians continued to fire on military and civilian targets. On the Sivershchina front, Russian forces deployed mortars and tubed artillery to fire on areas in the vicinity of Krinivka, Lyskivshchina, Karpovichy, Timonovichy, Leonivka, Chernihiv Oblast, and Katarinivka, Novomykolaivka and Zapsilia, Sumy Oblast. On the Slobodshchina front, Russian forces deployed mortars and tubed artillery to fire on areas in and around Zolochiv, Haliboke, Staritsia and Oherzev. On the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts, Russian forces deployed tank guns, mortars and tubed and rocket artillery to fire on areas in and around Dvorichna, Kislivka, Tabaivka, Krokmaln, Berestov, Vaishniv, Novoihorivka, Makivka and Nevsky. On the Bakhmut front, the Russians deployed tank guns and various types of artillery to fire on areas in and around Spern, Bilohorivka, Yakovlivka, Soledar, Bakhmutsky, Bakhmut, Ivanhorod, Opitny, Klishchivka, Andriivka, Zelenopilia and Ozaryanivka. On the Avdiivka front, the Russians deployed tank guns, mortars and tubed and rocket artillery to fire on areas in the vicinity of Avdiivka, Vodian, Pervomoyska, Nevelsky, Krasnohorivka, Marinka, Pereskovivka and Novomykhailivka. On the Novopavlivka front, the Russians deployed mortars and various types of artillery at their disposal to fire on areas in and around Vodian, Bohoyavlenka, Vuhledar, Pavlivka, Novokrayenka, Prikostivka, Zolota Niva, Vremivka and Velika Novosilka. On the Zaporizhia front, Russian forces fired on areas in and around Novosilka, Olhivsky, Huliaipol, Sherbaki and Mali Sherbaki using tank guns, mortars and tubed and rocket artillery. On the Pivdeny Buh front, more than 20 cities, towns and villages situated along the line of contact came under Russian fire. Trifonivka, Kherson Oblast, and Nikopol, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, sustained damage as a result of Russian tubed and rocket artillery attacks. Russia continues to suffer losses in Ukraine. The General Staff has confirmed that a Russian towboat was destroyed as a result of Ukrainian strike on a Russian crossing over the Dnipro River, Ed. near Antonivka, Kherson Oblast, on the 3rd of November. Another 2 vessels were damaged and are in need of repair. The Ukrainian armed forces also struck a column of Russian troops waiting to cross Dnipro near Olhivka. The number of Russian soldiers killed in the attack has yet to be confirmed. The General Staff also reported that 6 Russian fuel tankers were destroyed near Novovasilivka, Mykolaiv Oblast, on the 4th of November. Around 80 injured Russian soldiers were hospitalized in Melitopol on the 3rd of November. The occupiers' hospitals are understaffed. There is a shortage of qualified surgeons. The medical personnel cannot offer quality medical assistance, the General Staff added. Russian occupation forces in Kherson are looking for local residents who had refused to move to the territory temporarily controlled by Russian forces. Russian forces are looting the city of Kherson and destroying its infrastructure. Over the past 24 hours, Ukrainian aircraft carried out 11 airstrikes on Russian forces, striking 4 clusters of weapons and military equipment and 7 anti-aircraft defense systems. Ukraine's air defense forces shot down several Russian UAVs, including an Orlan-10 drone and 11 Shahed-136 drones, and 2 Kalibr cruise missiles. Ukraine's rocket forces and artillery struck 2 Russian command posts, 7 clusters of Russian military personnel, weapons and equipment, 1 ammunition storage point, and 4 other crucial military targets. The Netherlands will modernize 45 T-72 tanks for Ukraine within the new €120 million military aid package. The Netherlands is supplying heavy military materiel to Ukraine in a new package worth €120 million. In particular, $45 million is designated for the repair and provision of 45 modernized T-72 tanks. Together the US, Czech Republic, and the Netherlands are providing 90 T-72 tanks for Ukraine within this initiative, the Dutch Ministry of Defense informed. The first batch of tanks is expected to be delivered to Ukraine as early as next month. President Zelensky thanked the US, Czech Republic, and the Netherlands for providing 90 T-72 modernized tanks for Ukraine. Putin backs evacuation of civilians from occupied region. Russian President Vladimir Putin endorsed the evacuation of civilians from parts of Ukraine's southern Kherson region on Friday, the latest sign of Russia's retreat in one of the most bitterly contested areas in Ukraine. Ukrainian soldiers are bracing for determined fighting from their Russian foes around Kherson, raising the specter of a bloody slog in the coming weeks for control of a key city on the west bank of the Dnipro River, a gateway to the peninsula of Crimea annexed by Russia in 2014. The Russian-installed deputy governor of Kherson region said a 24-hour curfew had been imposed in Kherson city, amid what he said was a likely Ukrainian offensive against the city. Putin had said civilians in the Kherson region should be evacuated from the conflict zone, his first acknowledgement of a deteriorating situation in a region he claims to have annexed. Ukrainian forces using captured weapons fired at Russian targets near the key eastern city of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region, as fighting dragged on in an area that Moscow is trying hard to capture. The US on Friday announced an additional $400 million in military aid to Ukraine, including refurbishing 45 T-72 tanks and missiles for Hawk air defense systems for Kyiv. Chinese President Xi Jinping and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz condemned threats to use atomic weapons in Ukraine, with Scholz warning that Russia risked crossing a line in the international community by resorting to nuclear force. The foreign ministers of the Group of 7 economic powers said any use of chemical, biological or nuclear weapons by Russia would be met with severe consequences, renewing their call on Moscow to end the war in Ukraine. Russia wants the West to ease restrictions on state agriculture lender Roselkhozbank to facilitate Russian grain exports, according to 4 sources familiar with the request, made during talks to extend a deal on food shipments from Ukraine. Just a month before the G7 plans to cap the price of Russian oil, officials are racing to finalize details, leaving traders, shippers and insurers with questions about the price level and how it will work. Ukraine has sufficient gas supplies for this winter when planned imports are taken into account, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said, as the country prepares for further Russian strikes targeting its energy systems. Thank you for listening. I will keep you informed of the hottest developments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.